It is one of the most recognized symbols in human history. A motion so simple, yet so loaded with meaning that it can halt conversations, spark confrontations, and shift the atmosphere of a room in a heartbeat. But how did this crude display become so potent? It transcends borders, cultures, and languages. The young, the old, the famous, the forgotten, all have weaponized it. It is rebellion distilled into one subtle yet shocking act. But symbols are strange things. They are mirrors reflecting the hidden emotions of a society. The anger,
Über den Protest, schlechtlich. Es ist ja gar noch nichts bewiesen.
the mockery, the deep-seated resentments we often mask beneath polite smiles.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Have fun.
Thank you.
So when did this particular symbol emerge from the shadows of human behavior? And why? To find the answer, we must travel back, not just decades, but millennia. Back to the dusty streets of ancient cities, where philosophers mocked kings and warriors signaled death without uttering a single word. The story of the middle finger is more than an insult. It is a lens into power, shame, and human defiance itself. It is a gesture that has endured for thousands of years, but its roots stretch far deeper than many realize. To understand why the middle finger became so powerful, we must first understand where it began. In the 4th century BC, a man named Diogenes of Sinope chose a different path. He was not a man to be ruled by the conventions of society. He lived among the poorest of the poor, naked and shameless. Diogenes was a cynic, a group of philosophers in Hellenistic times that dropped out of conventional society, much like modern-day hippies. Embracing a life of poverty and self-sufficiency, he became famous for his unconventional behaviors that openly challenged societal norms, such as living in a jar or wandering public spaces with a lit lantern in daylight. He was known as Diogenes the dog. Diogenes believed that life's truest form was free of the pretensions of wealth and status. For Diogenes, the middle finger was not just a sign of vulgarity. It was a challenge to power, to authority, and to the pretensions of the rich and powerful. It was an act of defiance, a simple but loaded gesture that cut through the complex web of social norms. But it was not only philosophers like Diogenes who used this gesture. In fact, it became a common form of insult in both Greece and Rome. The digitus impudicus, or impudent finger, was used by Roman citizens to mock their enemies, to shame their rivals. It was both crude and effective, a symbol of dominance that transcended words. In the Roman Empire, this dirty gesture was more than just a personal insult. It became a social weapon, used in public debates, at the gladiatorial arenas, and even in the streets as a means to humiliate and provoke. Roman graffiti reveals a society that embraced the impudent finger in all its crude glory. From the bustling streets of Pompeii to the quiet corners of Rome, this gesture was a shorthand for disrespect. But it was also a sign of rebellion, of standing against the powerful, the wealthy, the rulers of the world. And so, the middle finger, born from the ancient Greek desire to mock and defy, and refined by the Romans as a symbol of contempt, became a mark of rebellion, not just an insult, but a declaration, a gesture that crossed lines and shattered silence. But history, as we know, is never linear. And just as quickly as this gesture rose to prominence in ancient societies, it seemed to vanish from the stage of history. But what happened next? Why did a symbol of power, humiliation, and defiance disappear, only to come roaring back in the modern world? The fall of the Roman Empire was a cataclysmic event, one that sent ripples through history. But with it, something curious happened. Symbols, once powerful and omnipresent, faded into the backdrop of time. The digitus impudicus, once a symbol of defiance in the heart of the empire, vanished from the public eye. Or so it seemed. For centuries, during the medieval period, much of the ancient knowledge, including the crude gestures of the Romans, was buried beneath layers of Christian influence and feudal rule. The symbol of the middle finger was forgotten, relegated to the pages of ancient texts and the distant echoes of Roman ruins. Medieval society was a time of strict hierarchy, where gestures of rebellion were often suppressed by the church and the aristocracy. In this world, symbols of defiance, like the middle finger, were seen as unholy and uncouth. They had no place in the rituals of a society where submission and reverence reigned. But as the Renaissance brought a revival of classical learning and ideas, something remarkable happened. The middle finger, once forgotten, began to resurface, albeit quietly. In the art of the time, subtle references to ancient Roman symbols began to reappear. Hidden in plain sight, the defiant gesture was once again embraced by those who challenged authority. As Europe's social fabric began to loosen, the middle finger crept back into public consciousness. But it wasn't until the 18th century, with the rise of revolutionary movements, that the symbol would truly reawaken. In the streets of Paris, as the French Revolution began to take shape, gestures of protest became more than just acts of defiance. They were declarations of revolution. Revolutionaries, seeking to topple centuries of monarchic rule, found power not just in words but in gestures. The middle finger, once a vulgar Roman insult, was now a symbol of liberation, a symbol of the people's disdain for the aristocracy. But this was only the beginning. By the time the 20th century rolled in, the middle finger had long shed its ancient origins. It had crossed oceans, continents, and cultures, carried on the winds of change. Yet it was still largely seen as a crude and rebellious gesture, one that belonged more to the fringes than the mainstream. But something unexpected happened. The middle finger found a second wind, breathing life into a new era.
Anti-war demonstrators protest U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War in mass marches, rallies, and demonstrations. Central Park is the starting point for the parade to the UN building.
It was the 1960s, a decade of revolution, of cultural upheaval. The world was shifting. New movements in civil rights, feminism, and anti-war protests challenged established norms. The middle finger, once the symbol of ancient scorn, found new life in the rebellious chants of rock stars and activists. Hendrix, one of the era's greatest icons, knew the power of gestures. His middle finger on stage wasn't just about rebellion, it was a statement of freedom, of personal expression, of saying what the words couldn't. As the world shifted in the 1960s, the middle finger transformed. No longer confined to the ancient streets of Rome or the protests of the French Revolution, it became a mainstream symbol. It was no longer just a crude gesture, it became a weapon of mass communication, spreading across television, film, and music.
Where is Tolman? Here I am, here I am.
Good.
Well, how are you today, sir? Very well, I say, sir.
Television, Hollywood, and pop culture embraced the middle finger. Characters in movies used it to convey everything from anger to disillusionment. By the 1980s, it was no longer a symbol just for the rebels and the outcasts. It was now mainstream. The 80s and 90s marked the full commercialization of the middle finger. It was no longer confined to protests or rebellious rock bands. It became an acceptable part of pop culture. From the streets to the silver screen, everyone was flashing it. The message was clear. Power, frustration, and rebellion no longer had to be subtle. They could be expressed with one simple, powerful gesture. The middle finger, once a symbol of ancient scorn, has become a universal language. But in its journey from the streets of Rome to the glowing screens of today, one question remains. Has it lost its edge, or is it still the most honest, primal expression we have?
Here, I got something for you. It's kind of a souvenir. Oh, here it is.
We've all seen it, or perhaps even done it. The middle finger is raised in moments of frustration, anger, or defiance. But what is it about this one simple gesture that makes it so universally understood? Why does it strike a nerve, even in a world that seems increasingly desensitized to shock?
Kevin, and welcome to Stratton Oakmont.
Thanks, man. I'm gonna have a beer. It's fun.
Take it easy, Kev.
Hey, thanks, Jordan. Thanks a lot.
The psychology of the middle finger isn't just about what it means, it's about how it feels. Our brains are hardwired to respond to certain gestures with intensity, and the middle finger? It taps into something deep within us, something primal. When we see the middle finger, it triggers a mix of emotions: disgust, anger, even fear. The brain responds almost instantly, bypassing reason. Why? Because the gesture is inherently provocative. It's not just about the finger, it's about the emotional context surrounding it. Unlike words, which can be parsed and dissected, the middle finger is a pure form of expression. It's an emotion distilled into action. No amount of politeness can mask its intent, and that's where its power lies. It bypasses diplomacy, bypasses social niceties, and directly taps into a place of frustration and aggression.
All right, there's my flair, okay? And this is me expressing myself, okay? There it is. I hate this job. I hate this.
The middle finger is deeply tied to the concept of dominance and submission. It's a challenge to authority, a rejection of social order. In evolutionary terms, it's a form of signaling, one that says, I reject you, I defy you. And because of that, it holds an enormous amount of psychological weight, even today. What's striking is that, despite its origins in ancient times, the middle finger still feels as relevant as ever. This is no accident. Our social structures may have evolved, but deep down, the human need to rebel, to challenge authority, to assert dominance, has remained the same. The middle finger is no longer just a physical gesture. It's been digitized, transformed into emojis, hashtags, and memes. It's become shorthand for frustration, defiance, and rebellion in the age of social media. But does this new form dilute its emotional impact? Or does it make it even more potent? The more we use the middle finger, whether in the real world or in the digital sphere, the more it becomes a part of our emotional lexicon. It is no longer just about a person's emotions in the moment. It is about the cultural atmosphere it helps to create. A world that is more openly hostile, more willing to express frustration at the click of a button, in real time. In today's world, where everything is shared and viewed through the lens of social media, the middle finger has become more than just a tool for defiance. It's an ironic badge of expression, worn as part of the digital armor of a generation that thrives on contradiction. And perhaps the most shocking twist of all, corporations are now appropriating the middle finger. In an era where everything can be branded, even defiance has been commercialized. The line between rebellion and consumerism is blurring faster than ever. The more we normalize the middle finger, the less its emotional weight may carry. The question we must ask ourselves is, when every company, influencer, and meme page uses it, does it lose its power to provoke? Or will it evolve into something even more potent as it finds its place in an increasingly disillusioned world?
Come on. Wow. I can't. Come on. I should never have taught you that. Stop that. Now, come on. Now, give me. Come on. No, don't do that. Stop that.